continuation. It now being 2 p.m, we move to questions without notice, and I call Senator Lyons.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Abetz. I refer to the Prime Minister's promise last week, and I quote, "Everything this government does is about jobs and growth," end quote. With unemployment increasing to 6.3%, the highest in 13 years, and the government's own budget predicting that unemployment will rise a further to 6.5%, isn't this just another one of Mr Abbott's broken promises?
Order. The Leader of the Government in the Senate, representing the Prime Minister, Senator Abetz.
Thank you, Mr President. Mr President, I thank Senator Lyons for the question, because what it allows the government to do is set out a record of employment creation that was only dreamed about under the previous Labor government. Indeed, the jobs growth we have seen in this first short period of the coalition government just in recent times is four times the job creation that Labor was able to achieve in its last year of government, namely 2013. So, Mr President, we have seen since the election of the coalition government 336,000 jobs created in our country. Now, Mr President, has the unemployment rate increased? Yes, it has, but like so much of statistics, you have to deal with all the facts. And do we have the highest number? Do we have the highest number of Australians in employment ever? Yes, we do. So why and how is it that you can have an increase in employment, have the highest number of Australians in employment, and simultaneously experience an increase in unemployment? It's very simple, and the statistics bear that out. There has been a huge surge in job participation, where people now have the confidence to put themselves into the job market and look for a job. And, Mr President, whilst we never like an unemployment figure that is anything but zero, we will work hard to drive it down. And that is why, Mr President, we would invite Senator Lyons to support our free trade agreements, to support our deregulation agenda, to support the Australian Building and Construction Commission.
Thank you, Minister.
All
the
of which
time
will
for
help grow
answering the
jobs.
question has expired. Senator Lyons, a
Mr
supplementary question.
President, maybe we'll get closer to the truth with the supplementary. I refer to the Prime Minister's election promise that his economic plan will, and I quote, "deliver more jobs," end quote, for all Australians. With 800,000 Australians now in the unemployment queue, hasn't he broken this promise too?
Minister.
Mr President, in relation to the first question, there was no broken promise. We promised that we would create 1 million jobs in the first 5 years of a coalition government, and on the figures to date we are on track, having achieved a job creation growth rate 4 times that was delivered by the Labor Party in their last year of government. Now, Mr President, I am delighted that Senator Lyons raises the issue of an economic plan. We have an economic plan. It's about bringing the budget back into a sustainable position. It's about free trade agreements, Mr President. It is about bringing the Australian Building and Construction Commission back. Mr President, it is not about reintroducing a carbon tax higher than the one Labor had when they were thrown out of office. They have not learnt the lesson that the Australian people taught them at the last election.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering the question has expired. A final supplementary question. Senator Lyons.
Thank you, Mr President. With coalition MPs saying, and I quote, "the government has become a preservation society to get Mr Abbott from week to week," end quote, isn't it true that the only job Mr Abbott is looking out for is his own?
Minister.
Mr President, the Prime Minister has a very distinguished record of service to the Australian people, and he has dedicated his life over the past 2 decades to exactly that cause. Mr President, unlike the leader of the Australian Labor Party that has dedicated himself to only one task, getting the leadership of the Australian Labor Party, which has seen him say one thing to Mr Rudd and then do another, say one thing to Ms Gillard and do another. And that's the same with his economic policies. He would say to Mr Latham, support free trade agreements, and then stand at Australian worker union rallies and condemn free trade agreements. That is the two-faced approach of the Leader of the Opposition, whereas in this Prime Minister, whether you like him or not, people know where he stands and why he stands, because he has a vision for the country and has a sense of duty of national service to our country, to which he has dedicated himself, and that is why I am so pleased to be a supporter of his.
The question has expired. Order.